programa Herensia Awe, um programa Herensia do qual nós temos Udo Lusse e sua esposa Bernie Lusse. Motivo tá com duas pessoas aqui tá baiando foi boneiro, no momento que o programa está passando, vai acabar, mas tem duas pessoas que contribuem rápido no boneiro. Nós vamos conversar com a ideia do programa Herensia. Televidente, hoje no nosso programa Herensia nós começamos um rato com duas pessoas que vira roupa e conheci na Boneiro e último ano, na minha visão, o último década na trata do senhor Udo Lusse e sua casa Bernie. Motivo tá que não vai foi Boneiro. Normalmente não tem bem programa Herensia tem não tem riba 70 anos, pero tem bem nossa exceção na hora de trata de não assim algo especial e que pode ser forma parte da vida social de Boneiro. Udo, yes, you are leaving Bonaire at this moment when the program is on the air. You are in the States. How is your feelings about leaving Bonaire?
Well, one eye is crying to say goodbye to a wonderful island we have lived for so many years and have made so many friends. And the other eye is joyful because it's looking to the future, to our families of our two children, Christoph and Dietrich, and their families, who have invited us to come and live with them.
In the States?
That is in California. One of the boys lives about an hour and a half drive from Los Angeles in the Mojave Desert, and the other one, Christoph, lives near Fresno and in the foothills of the High Sierra called Aubrey. That's a small village. So we are moving from small Bonaire to a Kunuku, to a small farm up in California.
So it's something like Bonaire. And a desert, you know, it make you feel at Bonaire.
It is interesting. Where Dietrich lives, we have the Joshua trees. So it's flat, high desert. So in the winter it gets cold, but in the summer it gets very, very hot. And it's flat land and there's lots of sand there. It's even so dry that in the desert they use a big place for a parking place for airplanes which are not used. So they sit there like KLM and other planes you see there. But we are moving to Aubrey, which is near Fresno. Yosemite Park is maybe known to a number of our people who have visited national parks in the United States. And we call the area where Christoph lives Tras di Montagne. It looks like going the way to Rincon, the rolling hills like on Bonaire. So it reminded us a lot of Bonaire when we moved there.
Bernie, what are your feelings?
Basically the same as Udo. I am very sad to leave Bonaire. It's a beautiful island, but it has beautiful people. And we have seen that now that we are leaving, how much the people care. And how we love them and have to say goodbye to them. That is very hard. And again, you know, going to the children for the first time, spending Christmas with one of the families will be very, very nice.
But Udo, you both are from Germany. What can you tell me about of where you was born, when you was a child? What can you tell me about this?
Well, I was born in Eastern Prussia. In German you say Ostpreußen, which is now Poland. After the war it became Poland. And I lived for all my youth, until I was 18 years of age, in a small, beautiful town of Soest. but not in Holland, but in Germany. It is spelled the same way. A very beautiful medieval town in Westphalia. So it reminds me of Holland a little bit when we have the name Soest, and that's where I lived. I also worked for a number of years near Frankfurt in the center of Germany, and that's actually my roots are in Germany. My parents are both have died, and they were German, so we are still German citizens, but we are at heart more Bonaireans because we lived 2/3 of our lives right here on this island, and only 1/3 of our lives, of my life, in Germany.
And Barry?
I was born in what was then Pommern. It is now Poland, and when I was almost 5 years old, my mother had to take her 4 children and flee the enemy and go to the West. My father was killed in the war. And after the war, we grew up very poor. And that was really, in retrospect, a great blessing because it helped us to get along with little. And it helped us to be inventive, to come up with things that we couldn't buy, but that we could make. And that has later on, here on Bonaire, helped us greatly, and helped us also as missionaries with Transworld Radio to make ends meet. And it wasn't very nice as a young girl growing up like that, but in retrospect it really helped me. And my mother made sure that we we had always something to eat. We had clothes that were given to us, and as a girl, no, that sometimes wasn't all that great and wonderful, but still you learn a lot of things, and you learn to appreciate things as well. And she made sure that we could get the best education that we could get under the circumstances. And one thing that she instilled in us, which helped us greatly, or helped me greatly on Bonaire also, was a love for nature, for everything that grows and flies and crawls and creeps and runs. And all the things that we could use here on Bonaire later on.
Mm-hmm. What was your experience, Udo? You lived in the post-war Germany. How was the life at the time?
Well, I just remember as a small child not having my father because he was gone as a...
he was a soldier?
He was a soldier, and he was away for 7 years in a prisoner of war camp in Russia. So I grew up without a papa, and my mother kept everything together, and we had little goose and ducks. We had to go and show around on the Kunuku to get some food. We had to even go and find wild plants to eat. We also appreciated care packages from the United States, which were sent to Germany after the war, so we could stay with dry milk. So early in our lives, we got used to dry milk, which we later on find on Bonaire, because we did not have any fresh milk. And we lived a simple life. Our house, which my parents had for a long time, was destroyed. So we lived like in a Kunuku house in the middle of the town. And but we were grateful. I remember my grandmother and my mother, they loved the Lord Jesus, and they taught us to love Him and to be thankful for every day that we could eat and drink and be clothed. And as Bernie said, it was not easy to get to wear the winter coat from my older sister, because they couldn't get one for me. So things were difficult, but we were joyful and we were thankful.
But your father didn't die during the war?
No, he came back, and then when I was 7, for the first time, I saw my father. I recognized him with a small dog standing out on the road in the town, and a stranger coming up from the street. I didn't know this man. They all had the same kind of jackets on. The dog running up to this strange man, jumping up, and I said, "This must be my father. This must be Papa." And he was coming home after 7 years, and I didn't know him.
It was an emotional moment.
Very emotional moments, yes, truly to say that.
How many brothers and sisters you have?
My sister passed away already at the age of 54, and she was a famous gospel singer in Germany, made a lot of records, and sang in many churches and mission tents and evangelistic campaigns. And my brother, who is 3 years older than I am, he is still living in Bremen in the north of Germany, and he is the family man with his wife Renate, who have 10 children. That is very unusual in the after the war times, but we have a good contact with him, and he keeps in contact with me, so we keep track of the family, which are the only ones really for our family in Germany.
The fact that you both are Germans, especially after the Second World War, you didn't find problem about being a German?
First of all, I was born in the war and a child. I didn't know what was going on. I did not know what some German people have done during the war. I learned this later on, and I was devastated when all of a sudden you realize what a country led by madmen, so to say, what they are able to do and how they could have followers. And I felt very, very bad. I always felt bad also on Bonaire, knowing what Germany also has done in Holland. And I was very shy and very apprehensive with Dutch people. In the meantime, we have had lots and lots of friends. And many people, of course, have realized that we as children had nothing to do with this. My parents had nothing to do with this. And so I think, therefore, we knew rather late, or let's say as even older teenagers, what really has happened and what that country has done. Yes, and we have felt terrible.
I assume you have the same opinion, Ludo.
Yes, we felt terrible about it, and we also felt terrible that a number, I think about 35 Bonaireans, lost their lives in the Second World War, and, well, more or less our country started it, so we felt bad about that. Therefore, on the beach, when we came early here to Bonaire, we told the boys, if you hear somebody speaking Dutch, we only, as a family, talk English. So we do not want to create a problem for the older Dutch people who may have suffered because of our country, that they know that we are German. So we spoke English among each other on the beach when there were some Dutch people. But as Bernie said, we have made a number of friends, not only of the Bonaireans, of course, but also with the Dutch population, who fully understood, yes, there was a huge problem and some of the Dutch families suffered a lot, but we, being children, 2 and 4 years old in the times of the war, had nothing to do with it.
What was your first job?
My first job was working in the studios, sound studios in Wetzlar, Germany, where programs for Transworld Radio and Radio Luxembourg, Christian programs, were produced. So I learned the audio production of radio programs, and at the same time I was, you could call me, the youth pastor in the Free Methodist Church in Wetzlar, bringing young people together, young soldiers, young people from the street, and we had open evenings with the young people there. So this was actually my first job, learning and working with audio equipment and putting radio programs together.
And Björn, is there where you met Udo?
No, I didn't meet Udo there. after I had had a job and worked in it for a while, I decided that I wanted to go and do something different. So I went to France, to Nice, as an au pair for 1 year to study French. And there, in a small church, came a man and he said, "Oh, there is a mission station, Transworld Radio, right there in Monte Carlo, and there is a German young man there. We have to get you two together." So one day he brought me over to Monte Carlo and took me to church, and there was one solitary single man sitting there, and that was Udo, and that is where we met, in Monte Carlo.
It was love at first sight.
Maybe not the first, but the second, I think. Yes, I found him a very nice young man, a fun young man, and most of all, what was very important for me, that he loved the Lord Jesus Christ. That was the main important thing. Yes.
But you both grew up in a Christian family.
That is partially correct. I would say that through the war times, my mother especially, through my grandmother, sought the faith in the Lord Jesus. And she took us to church, to Sunday school, and to the church services. So that's how we, early in life, learned about the Lord. And at the age of 12, when I went to confirmation classes, like, in the state church, I said, this has to have real meaning in my life. It's not just something you learn from the book, that you read some and learn some songs and some gospel or Bible verses, but that it really means something to my heart. And when that happened, very soon after that I took Jesus as my Lord and Savior into my personal life, I had the desire to become a missionary. So then I was seeking what I could do. I was a young person, and I followed the way of my sister into the recording studios, but she was a singer, and so I became a producer of radio programs. And as Bernie said, we met in Monte Carlo. There was an emergency at Transworld Radio in Monte Carlo. Some person got sick, had to leave very quickly to go to the United States, and they asked me on Christmas Day in 1965 to pack my suitcase, go on the train and go to Monte Carlo. And I worked there for half a year in the production studios with over 20 languages, which I didn't know, of course, but putting audio together in the studios of Transworld Radio in Monte Carlo, Monaco. Because Transworld Radio was using Monte Carlo, or still using, to broadcast missionary programs into Europe and, beyond. At that time, Bonaire station Transworld Radio was being built, and they already told me, you have only to go to Monte Carlo to help, but then as soon as the half year is over, you go to Bonaire. And that's where my heart was. I was looking to go to Bonaire. But God had a good idea, because somebody told me, a single man is no good to go far away from the mother and father. You should have a wife. And so I said, God, if that's the case, then you help me find her. I have not much time to look. And here all of a sudden was the only German person in southern France. And I said to God, if she is the right one, you have to tell me. But how does God tell you? Well, the Bible has examples like Gideon. He said one day to God, if I have to do that, make this coat of a sheep wet one day, and the next day make it dry. Then I know it is your will to do this. So I said, God, I just met her one time. I don't know where she lives. I only saw in the evening we brought her home with my friend with a car. I have to find her alone. I don't speak French. I have a little moped. So I went on a weekend. I was driving up the road and I said, this must be the house maybe. I ring the bell and here she come down. I said, Lord, thank you. That's the answer to me, that she is the one you have for me for my life. And that sealed it. There was no question. 6 weeks later, in Germany, we were engaged.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't marry in in Germany?
No, we did not marry because I quickly had to go to Bonaire. So I took a Hapag Stuttgart ocean freighter and came from Antwerp via Curacao. Well, I went to Curacao and then I flew over with a small little plane those days. And 5 or 6 months later, Bernie followed me because she had to have training in radio production in the offices of Wetzlar Transworld Radio.
You want to add something about this?
Well, when I saw Udo, I knew that he was going to go to be a missionary. And I liked him. But then I prayed and I said, "Oh Lord, I do not want to stand in his way, so please help me not to fall in love with him." So, of course, as you can see now, it didn't happen. And when he came, yes, he really had no idea. He didn't even know my last name. So I am very convinced. And sometimes even if there is any disagreement, for example, in a marriage, or when you think, and those things happen, oh, why in the world did I marry him? When you concentrate on the bad things, and then we always have this. It was God who brought us together. Of course, when I concentrate on the good things, which I mostly do, he is the most wonderful man I could have ever married. So there he is. But that has helped me greatly, this knowledge that this is the man for my life that God had given me.
You know, traveling with the ship from Europe to here, what kind of experience is that? It don't happen every in 8 and 9 hours. You are now in Europe. In that time, you have to take a ship.
I should add to that not only God gives the understanding that it is His will to marry a wonderful person, but He gave also the emotions and the love to Bernie, and I have to say she is the most wonderful person that God could have brought into my life, and I'm grateful for that. We have stayed together for these nearly 40 years, and God has helped us through difficult days, because not everything is rosy, as she said, and has blessed us with wonderful times, and especially with 2 wonderful boys, which she, of course, had to deliver and raise most of the time. So I'm very grateful to Bernie that God brought her into my life. Now back to your question about traveling by boat.
But you forgot the question.
That is an interesting question, because I didn't fly. I had a few boxes, and there were only a few people on board as passengers. We went first with the Hapag from Antwerp to Cadiz in Spain, and the Stuttgart was equipped with a huge crane. So we picked out of the harbor a torpedo boat for the Navy in Chile, South America. They grabbed the thing, put it like you see it on Bonaire, at Port Bonaire. They grab it and put it on top of the deck, the whole ship. So we traveled with that 2 weeks, of course, via the Canary Islands to Curacao. And in the Bay of Biscay, I wake up in the middle of the night, I thought, with running and whistles and noise, and I thought, what's going on? It's still, I think, time to sleep. And so I wanted to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. And I looked out, and it was red, and I thought, oh, the sun is already coming up, until I smelled fuel smell. I stuck my head out, and the whole horizon was burning. And then I heard the whistles again. I ran out to the bridge, and here the first officer, captain, all the crew was running. 2 tankers had collided. A big tanker had hit a small full tanker with 55,000 tons of crude oil, exploded, big fire, and we had to stand by for a radio contact for salvage vessels and all that. Well, later on we learned everything turned out dark. It was still night, everything was quiet. We could see on the radar something was passing us. We could hear the noise of a wave, and an empty tanker was passing us close by, nearly to collide with us. It was the tanker which made the accident, and in the distance we could see the blinking light of the Norwegian captain who had rescued the whole crew, including himself, with a small life craft from the burning Norwegian tanker. And so we were grateful that only one person perished, nobody else. The person who was on the bridge of the tanker who made the accident. And then we continued, and after arriving on Bonea, years later, we meet Mr. Harness, a gentleman from Norway who had a guest house here by Transworld Radio on the beach Playa Pabao. And we talked to him about my exciting experience with burning tankers, people rescued, everybody safe. He said, "What was the name of the ship?" And Bernie kept the letters, because I was writing letters from Bonea to her in Germany. We were so much in love, we were so far apart, that she took out a letter and said, yes, it was this name of the ship. And he said, in Norway, "This is my neighbor." He was living in Norway, and this was an exciting experience for me to come to Bonea with a ship, the Hapag, from Antwerp to Curaçao.
Sure. So you see, it's a small world.
It's a small, small world. You can say that, yes.
Televidente, nós estamos conversando hoje no nosso programa Herensia com o senhor Udo e Bernie Lusse, no momento que acaba na nota boneiro mas pero não foram parte durante o open aia de vida social e vida aqui no boneiro.
Cada dinambra ya wesi pikula dioro Viva na mi porta mi pobre balubite Daria tastimamento vitambe tastimele Daria tastimamento vitambe tastimele I quasina I porasi daria
Awe televidente na nós estamos conversando com Udo Lusse e sua esposa Bernie, of Bernie, wanneer te dizer na Alemanha. Bonaire, you came to Bonaire, Udo. What was your first opinion about Bonaire?
Well, before I came, somebody told me, when you come to the island, there's only Transworld Radio, a few houses of some people, and nothing else. So when I came, I saw this town with all the lights. I saw the people driving. I said, "Is this all Bonaire?" They said, "Yes," and all the beautiful flowers, and it was wonderful. So I was impressed. My first impressions were wonderful, of a wonderful island.
What year it was? In 19...
It was in 1966 that I came, 1 month before. After Dr. Welvaart. Dr. Welvaart came, I think, in June, and I came in August of 1966 to the island.
Bonaire was quiet, friendly people, everyone knew everyone. And you came to work at the Transworld Radio in the beginning.
I came here because Transworld Radio has set up this big station to broadcast the good news of Jesus Christ into many areas here, South America, North America, the Caribbean, and also to the Far East with shortwave. And they were using German tape recorders, Telefunken. And I was trained in Germany also not only in production of radio programs, but also to repair those complicated tape recorders. And so we had 13 of these complicated tape recorders, and I was trained as a mechanic to repair them. And that was my main occupation at the beginning when I came to Bonaire.
So no production at that in the beginning?
Not until Bernie arrived, and maybe she wants to tell a little bit about our production time with German programs from Bonaire.
So you produce German programs here in Bonaire?
We did produce some, but many German programs also went over Radio Monte Carlo. And there were many, and still are many, German people in South America, Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Chile. And so they sent us programs from Monte Carlo, which were used already. Then Udo took the programs, cut out everything, and we used at that time, of course, tape. Udo cut out everything that was not relevant for South America, mainly announcements. Then he wrote new announcements, and then I came to the studio and spoke the announcements. So I was the German voice for South America for 25 years until we quit the shortwave.
You was the only one that presented those programs.
We were the only ones from Bonaire that presented those programs, and then also letters came here, and we answered those letters both from Germany and from South America and from around the world. So then the German branch built offices in South America, and then the letter writing became a little bit less. But yes, for 25 years we did produce and work with the programs and with the German people down
But
there.
your voice was in the air too, Udo, or only Bernie?
Normally, the man is the voice in a family. In our case, it was not, as far as radio production was. Bernie was the German voice for our listeners in the world, actually, from Bonaire. So I did the production. I was behind the equipment in the studio, but the voicing was done by her. And we had not only letters from the many, many minorities of German listeners in South America, but from all over the world. I think of one listener in the Philippines, a German who married a Filipino, had a small little island far away, but he listened, because he had not much else to do, to shortwave radio. And he said, I'm listening, I'm hearing your German programs from Bonaire, and here I write you a report.
What kind of letters did you get from the listeners, Bernie?
I think about right now of a nun who lived in the jungles of Brazil. And she had a school, or she was head of a school, that trained Brazilian girls to become school teachers. And she told us how thankful she was for these programs and how much information she got and how she used these programs in teaching her girls. And so that were letters. Other letters, for example, oh, we are older people. We live in an old folks' home. We cannot go any place. These are our only church. We really like the programs. We got a letter from a scientist in Czechoslovakia who not only, for example, commented the first moon landing over television, but also produced programs in higher mathematics for Radio Prague. And he used the songs from the programs from Bonaire to fit into his programs. And so he told us all about this. And so it was letters from people who were blessed, letters from people who used our programs, requests for example, songs for a birthday, so all kinds of letters with problems. Could we help them in any way? And that way.
It was interesting that her mother, of course, got to know about her daughter getting into radio, going with Transworld Radio, and my involvement, that she got so excited about it when she saw what the programs were doing in Europe, for example, that she got involved. And she was she was writing programs for women. So sometimes Bernie had to announce that her mother, but she couldn't say, my mother is now going to speak to you. But these were programs letters which were sent to South America. And as she said, there are quite some minorities of people who only spoke German. They lived in colonies like the Dutch or the German colonies, and they had no other means of meeting in churches if it rained or so. Their church was a radio. So they would be at home tuning in to Bonaire. We had half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening.
But you wrote letters too for those people, of only you have comments the letters in the program?
No, we answered those letters as well, and then they wrote back. And there are two instances, for example. And you asked Udo before whether he was ever on the radio. Yes, he was when I had a cold, or for example when the kids were born. And so the contact with the listeners sometimes was really personal. And this one lady in Brazil knew that we were expecting a baby, and I was off the air for a week because I was in the hospital here. And she thought, oh well, it must have happened. And so she sent a little package with hand-knitted shoes with pink and blue ribbons in it. And so we really had a very personal contact. Also, the man I told you about in Czechoslovakia, he invited us on one of our furloughs to visit him in Czechoslovakia, and even made radio programs with us for Radio Prague, which were aired because people that we know listened to them. And so we had a real personal contact with a number of these visitors as well. And then once we were sent to Brazil to visit German colonies and visit listeners and talk about Transworld Radio. So we had the great privilege of meeting quite a number of those people that listened to Bonaire, and so many people know about Bonaire because of Transworld Radio and our programs.
Are there many Germans in South America?
There are quite some minorities, as Bernie said, mainly in Brazil. In Argentina, there are complete villages in Paraguay, Chile, and even in Venezuela. Colonia Tovar, for example. And some of the older people there was no way that they learned Portuguese or Spanish. The only language they knew was German. So we were able to supply them with Christian music, with Christian gospel programs. Also, some pastors or missionaries who lived out in remote areas, had no contact with other people. Then the tribes even they were working with used our programs for their own spiritual life and for their training, and have material to teach their small congregations.
You was the German voice of Transworld Radio here in Bonaire. There was a Spanish voice and an English voice. I think Samuel Montoya was the...
That's correct. Yeah. Samuel Montoya, Uncle Buongiorno, yes, Donaldo y Diana Strong in Spanish, and then Israel de Lima was a Portuguese voice, and Daniel Canfield. So there were a lot of specialists in the different languages who all stayed here for many years, but they're all long gone.
The Transworld Radio community in Bonaire in the beginning was a strong community, and then many of them went away. You was living in Terracora, into the people of Terracora. How did it feel living there in the beginning?
In the beginning in Terracora, I felt well.
Because most of you, of the people of Transworld, were living in Belgium. And you was living in Terracora.
We were living in Terracora, and a few other people. And in the beginning, of course, one feels a bit apprehensive, not knowing the language, not knowing anybody. But one thing that really helped were the children. And I put Christoph, for example, in a stroller, and I drove around, and the ladies looked over the fence, and then I went to them. And they asked me some words which I didn't understand, but then I could learn, and the next ones I could already tell them that he was a boy and how old he was. And the people from Terra Cora were so nice. They took us in. There was no apprehension from their side. They accepted us. We were a young couple, and they just accepted us as the people we were, as part of their community. So we very, very soon felt very much at home there. And the ladies would stop and "Moro, Senora, contabai," and so they would be interested in our lives, if there was anything wrong, and could we help. And it was just, we very, very much enjoyed our time in Terra Cora. When we think of Bonaire, we think of Bonaire, but we think mainly as the people of Terra Cora.
But you was involved too with Centro de Barrio Terra Cora. How it began?
Well, we met Janci pretty soon.
Janci Younger.
Janci Younger, that's correct. But I should point out that they were busy with Seraus and others to plan the community center, to build it. There was nothing there. So two girls were coming to our house, and they were asking for some money. And we didn't know, because we didn't speak the language. Bernie now speaks Papiamento and understands Papiamento quite well, what they wanted. So we didn't give them any money, because we didn't know. And later on, I felt terrible that we did it, because they were collecting money for cement and for stone to build the barrio of Terra Cora. A week later, it was Father's Day, and all the community got the fathers together on a bus, and with chicken and with pastiches and with everything supplied. They took a tour of the island with all the fathers of Terra Cora. And they invited me, the strange man. And although I did not help them with the Buurt Center, so I later on, I all learned that, and I felt so bad. And then Janci Younger came, and he said, "We are building this community center," and told us the plans. And I said, "We want to help. If they are a class, we can teach something." And this goes back to the time when it was war. When we had to make presents, we had no money. We couldn't go in the store and buy something at Littmann or so to give to Mama and Papa for Christmas. We have to make it with a little saw, with a little paper, and so on. And we had learned that as children in Germany. So I said, "Janci, if you have young people, children, we can teach handcraft. And when you're ready, come and tell me." So Janci said, "When I'm ready, I come." So he went away. And I thought, he will never come back. 1 year later, a knock on the door, Janci Younger. And he said, "Udo, we are ready." I said, "For what?" "For you and Bernie to come and teach." I said, "Wow." And then for years, every week, we went, and Janci Younger and Frata Fabius and Frata Candido and others, they brought the people for the Buurt Center. And that's where we started, with the handcrafts of Terra Cora. And we worked for 3 months, and we made an exhibition. Over 300 people came and signed the guest book. They bought everything we had, including the raw pieces of coral and Brazil wood and goat skin, and everything went. So it was a wonderful beginning that Janci came back, and we had a beautiful time with the Centro de Barrio of Terra Cora at the beginning phase when we came to Bonaire.
That was, yeah.
We should also maybe mention that Janci at that time worked for Transworld Radio. And so there we already had contact with him, more contact with him through that than with other people.
That was your only involvement with the community of Bonaire, or did you did some other work?
Well, no, it was not, because we are Germans, and we do speak the language, then and Bonaire is a tourist island, they needed a lot of information in German, and that didn't exist. So we did quite a lot of translation work for the tourist office, for Hugo Gerhard's his office, for Barranca tours when it was still here, for many things, folders. The Holiday Bonaire, for example, we translated all of that into German so that the German people could read information material for Bonaire. That was one involvement that we had. And since we love this island and have studied a lot about this island, we also gave tours for many years in that way to help Bonaire to promote the island.
Udo, let me say by Bernie, you love the nature of Bonaire,
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, very much.
But the nature is now under pressure. They are building everywhere. What do you think about this?
Sometimes it makes me sad that they are building in areas where I think those areas need to be preserved. One, for example, that I am a little bit concerned of or saddened is Lima. Because there is lots of water there. And someday maybe Bonaire might need water when we cannot produce it. And of course, that saddens me a little bit. Change has to come. There's change everywhere. And but there are certain things of Bonaire that I think need to be preserved. For example, the biggest dividivi tree, or the biggest Wayaka, which is behind Bopek there. And some things I think...
Biggest Wayaka is behind Bopek?
Unless you know one that is... that is
where is the biggest dividivi?
The biggest dividivi tree is when you pass the entrance to Cerro Largo on the side on the road to Rincon. Then you take a right turn and you go to Bolivia. And then you pass the gate of Bolivia and you go a little bit on that road. And there, I think, is the biggest dividivi tree. Not in height, but maybe in circumference.
And,
do you know that tree?
No, I don't. I walk every week there, but I didn't see it.
And the largest, the Wayaka tree, which is not very high, but it takes about 3 people to reach around, is above Bopek, where the new radar station is built. On that place there, on the right side, you find the biggest, oldest, I think, Wayaka tree on Bonaire.
But one thing I do want to say in connection with that, and that is that we are amazed on the preservation work that has gone already on Bonaire. I think Bonaire is really doing a very good job in that. And one thing that we also always hear from tourists is how clean this island is. And that is very important for preservation also. And so we are, we are very thankful for all the people who walk around and pick up garbage and work on that, and for the schools who do that, and for just people. So there is a lot is being done, and for that we are thankful.
That's the preservation of the nature. What do you think about the preservation of the culture of Bonaire? That's important too.
That, of course, is a little bit sad. When we first came to Terra Cora, there was all the music still going and the older people playing their instruments. And there was San Pedro and San Juan and there was Simadang and all of that. And that we feel is maybe lost a little bit, although there is lots of effort when you think of Rincon, when you think of your work to preserve at least documents and to preserve preserve all these things, then we are thankful for that. But again, that is going everywhere in the world. The old culture, and that has happened for centuries, is not held up as much as it used to be.
I think it is wonderful that you, with all the materials you have gathered over the years for looking into the new year of 2007, produce a beautiful calendar with the old days and pictures of Bonaire. This is heritage of a beautiful island, and I think this is marvelous to see that. I was yesterday in the Bonaire Museum. I haven't been there for a long time, and I was impressed with the beautiful work they have been doing over the years there. Wonderfully set up. I was just deeply encouraged to see that's where they keep it. And the music, I hear that the Silver Bullet, the Rayos de Spirga, they are buying new steel bands from Trinidad, and they are keeping what Franklin Scarpton started some 35 years ago in Terracotta, tuning his handmade oil drums into a beautiful steel band, playing not only rock and modern music, but up to Mozart's Kleine Nachtmusik, classical music. This, I think, you can only find on Bonaire.
That's not the culture, though. Mozart is not Bonairean culture, really, but they do it. But one thing that really, I think, is very wonderful also is all the booklets that you have written with all the old ways of life. Is your program with the older people, so that this will not die, that it will be kept alive somewhere, even if the young people don't live it anymore, but they can learn about it, how it was. And that, I think, is important.
And you translated the book Chogogo of Alphonse Gabriel, so you did your contribution too.
Yes, I was impressed when you brought me the book and I translated it, and thinking of one lady, for example, from Germany, from Munich. She came to Bonaire with a group of bird experts. She said, I only travel with a group here to come to this island because I love nature. I come along, but she wanted to see Transworld Radio. But what you told us with the book there that we translated and went back in the history, how early the flamingo was recognized as such an important bird, and here we have Flamingo Island, Bonaire.
Finally, you have a message for the people of Bonaire now that you are leaving this island. Ladies first.
My message of Bonaire is that that I would love to see that although things cannot be changed, we cannot go back to the past, but that things from the past, like respect, like I hate to say the word, but there it is, obedience, for example, love among each other, caring for one another, helping one another, that is being held up on this island. And we just love this island, not only the nature, not only the underwater world, but we love the people, and we wish the people for Bonaire the best. We keep them in our hearts. We want to thank them for what they have meant for us, what they have given us in our 40 years here on Bonaire. And we will pray for the people of Bonaire.
Well, I just cannot add too many words to what Bernie just said. I would like to give a special thanks to the people of Terracotta, singling them out of a wonderful small community, so warm, so loving, so kind to us, who take in a foreigner couple and make them as family, teaching them their ways to live, how to cope with the other culture, with different food, with a different language, with everything. Make them family. And we would like to thank the people of Bonaire, and especially those in Terracura, of the Centro Barrio of Terracura, for giving us such a wonderful, wonderful celebration of 40 years leaving the island and having a beautiful farewell party. We were so deeply impressed, and you covered it, and we would like to thank the people to continue this warmth to the outside world. This is what the tourist is looking for. This is what the outsider wants: the peace, the tranquility, the safety, and just the warm emotions that people can still sit down in Christmas time on the front porch, the old man, play the old instruments and listen to the old folk songs from years gone by. So we would like to thank the people of Terracura, of the Buurt Center there, and all those who made such a wonderful impression to us in the farewell party. We will never forget it. We will never, as I said in the meeting there, forget the people of Bonaire. We will take them with us in our hearts and think of you, and we will pray for you, also for you in your important message to this island of keeping the culture going and preserved for the young generation coming up, looking ahead to the future. But you carry the heritage of solid foundations, of strong families in the different barrios to carry on as a heritage into the new generation. And we appreciate your efforts of what you are contributing over many years of continuity. This is so important, to keep something going for a long time. And that's what we have experienced. And we would like to say, Masha danki.
Danki Udo y Bernie. Y esa kita pada tour televidente del programa Herensia de Otro Simán.
Pasa con los acosamos. Ay, buenas noches, te vaya. Ay, buenas noches, compañero. Ay, buenas noches, vosotros pasamos. Ay, buenas noches, vosotros vivos.